Hello, everybody. Welcome. Welcome to Eastside Arts Alliance, NICA Dance Theater, and San Francisco Ethnic Dance Festival World West. We are in our series, this new season called called Claiming Our Knowledge. And we are so happy to be here sharing an amazing lineup of amazing artists internationally and locally. They are super amazing human beings. So they will be sharing with us their craft, their art, their music. This collaboration has been put together by the director of the Ethnic Dance Festival and Wang, which we are so proud and so honored to be working with her. Um, I wanted to say something specifically about Eastside Arts Alliance. Eastside Arts Alliance is an organization of third world artists, cultural workers, and community organizers of color committed to working on the San Antonio and other Oakland neighborhoods to support a creative environment that improves the quality of life of our communities and advocates for progressive, systematic social change. As I say, we are so honored to be collaborating with San Francisco Dance Festival, World Art West, and and for me to just be working with Anne is just like more than my friend. She's an amazing advocate for social change. I wanted to just read a little bit about some of her highlights about the work that she has done. Right now, she's the new executive director of World Art West. The EGNI Dance Festival has been supporting almost over 450 dance companies, engaging 20,000 artists and sustaining over 100 dance forms from around the world. Uh, she's an expert of bringing knowledge of capacity building and resources of equity. And she's also very interested in bringing equity in all those institutions. Her passion is about social change, and her immigrant family's journey to escape political persecution has put a lot of power culturally to support cultural specific organizations. So there is so much that she has done. She has been working extensively with cultural artists, and including Charya Burt, our highlight amazing artist, Naomi Defoe, Kiasi Malonga, Chinese Cultural Center, Dimension Dance Theater, Cuba Caribe, Kunamakwe, among many others. So please welcome the director of the EGNI Dance Festival, Angwan.
Wow, thank you. Thank you. What an honor, Jose. It's such an honor for World Arts West to partner with Eastside and Naka Dance to make this great program happen. Briefly about World Arts West, we're a 42-year-old regional presenting organization. Besides our flagship program, the San Francisco Ethnic Dance Festival, we also have a robust artist service program that includes professional development workshops, grants, coaching, fiscal sponsorship. This month, we're rolling out Living Traditions Season 2, and of course, the Live Arts Resistance Program, in partnership with Eastside and Naka. The purpose of this program is really to highlight the cultural artists, social justice stories about the artists told by the artists themselves. Tonight, it is my great honor to welcome Charya Burt. I met Charya in 1997 in a dressing room at the San Francisco Ethnic Dance Festival when we were performing in festival that year. Charya is an acclaimed master teacher, choreographer, culture bearer, vocalist, and teacher of classical Cambodian dance. Charya has performed the San Francisco Ethnic Dance Festival 16 times. Throughout her life, she has dedicated her entire life to reviving Cambodian culture after so many artists were perished during the Khmer Rouge genocide. And Charya will be sharing that story with you all tonight. To begin our interview, I'd like to invite Charya to share a poem.
Hello. Thank you, Anne. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Thank you to Eastside Art Alliance, Naka Dance Theater, and World Art West for hosting tonight's event. Before I perform, before I begin the program, I would like to start out with a poem to call all the spiritual spirit to come down and to bless us all and to watch over us. សូមលោកយាងមកប្រងព្រំយើងក្រុមគ្នាបានសុខរមនាតរៀងទៅThank you.
Thank you so much for that beautiful blessing and poem, Charya. So let's begin. Tell us a little bit about where and when were you born?
I was born in 1970 in Phnom Penh, Cambodia. My father was educated and he spoke French fluently. He was a manager of a rice mill in Cambodia. It's one of the largest rice mills. My mom was a homemaker, and I have 8 siblings, 2 brothers and 6 sisters. I'm the youngest. I live in a beautiful home. I have a pet pig called Koot, whom I used to wash every day. Before the war, Phnom Penh was considered the pearl of Asia. But it was not to last. During the 1970s, the Vietnam War spilled into Cambodia. At the same time, there was a coup where King Norodom Sihanouk was overthrown by the general Lon Nol, who was put into the power by the regime, who was very corrupted. This general Lon Nol was put by the Americans. And this helped to accelerate the rise of the Khmer Rouge regime. When the Khmer Rouge came, they told us to leave our home. And they said, in 3 days, you could return home. And that 3 days turned into 3 years, 8 months, and 20 days of hell. I talked about this experience in a dance piece I call The Rebirth of Apsara.
When the Khmer Rouge took over Cambodia, from our house, we could hear the Khmer Rouge soldier yelling out from the street, "Everyone must leave home immediately. The Americans are about to bomb the city."
As the sound of the bomb began to intensify, my family began to pack things up like stalks of rice, some clothes, food, and load them onto the ox cart. I remember seeing my pet pig, Koot, running back and forth as I stood outside the gate, reaching my hand to reach her heart for the last time. We all say goodbye to our beautiful home. I hold on to my mother's hand tightly. When we start walking away, and then we begin to immerse ourselves into the massive wave of humans. On the road, we saw people carry stuff on their heads, pots and pans. We heard the gunshots and the sound of children crying. I just squeezed my mother's hand tightly. After walking all day, We arrived in this village called Ginswai in Kandar province. We then heard the announcement of the Khmer Rouge soldier saying that if you are a technician, you could return home because they need those technicians to work on the light in the city. So my sister and her husband got into a truck. And she asked two of my brothers to go with her. But my brother insists that they would stay with the family. This is how my older sister got separated from the family. So all of us began our journey forward. After a long day of walking, we arrived into a small village called Satabo. We built a temporary plastic lean-to and stayed there for a month or so. One of my strongest memories about really living there was when I caught a malaria. I remember by mid-morning, I would be under the blanket and shaking for about an hour. And then after that, I was soaked with sweat. My mother found some of a bitter leaf and made them into a juice, and she had me drink it. I kept drinking it for a few days, and then finally I felt better. And then we had to leave again. This time Khmer Rouge told us to get on a train, and those trains took us to the southwest side of Cambodia, called Battambang province. We finally arrived in a small village called Jong Chadao. The Khmer Rouge welcomed us with delicious meals, and I remember it was so good. And that was the last real meal I had for over 3 years. They placed us in a small house with an old couple who lived on the top. And we and my family and another family live on the ground. We were considered the old people because we were from the city. The old idea was to re-educate us to be farmers. The villager, the old people were all with the power. We had to be careful. We can't make them be angry with us or else we would be killed. We had to dye all our clothes black because they want us to look black like everyone else. All black clothes, short haircut, and a red scarf. I felt like I was living in a black and white world. The Khmer Rouge called that revolution Year Zero, where everything would go back to an agricultural society. No money, no family, no art, no association of the past, and no education except being indoctrinated to their ideology. I completely missed out on elementary school. My childhood was completely stolen. Before we were forced, many people were forced to work hard on the rice field day in and day out with almost no food. If you're sick, there were no medicine. All of this combined, that's what killed my two brothers and my father. I remember as a young child, I was always hungry. 3 days after my father died, the Khmer Rouge came to where we live and asked my mother for my father because they just found out my father's identity. My mother told them that he already died, but they didn't believe her. So my mother took them to where my father's remains were. As a result, nearly a 4-year Khmer Rouge, about 2 million people died, along with over 90% of artists, educators, and intellectuals. The only one who survived were the ones who realized what was going on, and they hid their identity, like my father, who would have been killed right away if he was found out. This is the only surviving photo of my father. This picture was blown up from a tiny picture my mother had hidden all along during the Khmer Rouge. Anyone with family photo could have been killed because the Khmer Rouge required us to give up our family and devote ourselves to Ankala, the invisible organization. This is why I did not have any photo of my early childhood.
Wow. Thank you so much for that powerful sharing, Charya. Before I begin the next set of questions, I want to increase our audience. If you like to share your comments or questions, please type in your comments in the chat box on Facebook. I remember seeing that photo of your father in your home the very first time. It was really, 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 really moving. And so you had shared with us childhood during Khmer Rouge and your lost childhood during Khmer Rouge. And how did the Khmer Rouge regime end, and what was your life like after the regime ended?
The war ended when the Khmer Rouge soldier attacked the Vietnamese soldier at the border. Then the Vietnamese army chased them back into Cambodia, where they found out a completely broken society and empty city. With the help of the Khmer Rouge official who defeated, the Vietnamese helped set up the communist government in Cambodia in 1979. My family did not know that the war was over, but we knew something was happening. We saw some of the Khmer Rouge wounded soldiers walking and passing our village. One of the soldiers asked my family if we want to go with him to the west. But my family said no. So we made our way back home towards Battambang city. After the Khmer Rouge regime, my family moved to Kampong Thom province, where my uncle Cheng Pon once again established a performing art program. Cheng Pon was a Cambodian art scholar and minister of culture through the 1980s, who devoted his entire life nurturing and preserving Cambodian arts. It was in Kampong Thom that I first exposed to dance. After living there for a while, we made our way to Phnom Penh. That's when we found out our house had been burned down. So we lived with my uncle for a little bit, and then we moved to live with my older sister. After the Khmer Rouge, there was a great effort to try to call back all the surviving artists, master teachers, to come back to Phnom Penh. The School of Fine Art was established in 1980s to try to rebuild the culture that was nearly lost. In 1982, I began studying dance there at the School of Fine Arts. I live in a dormitory where my training started at 5 a.m. I study classical dance at 7 to noon, and then in the afternoon, I study general education classes. After studying there for a few years, I see all the effort and commitment by master teachers, my uncle, and other teachers who did whatever they could to try to preserve arts and the dance traditions. I realized how important it was to be a part of this cultural rebirth. My uncle once said, the culture is the spirit of the nation. This spirit was implanted in me then, and now I feel obligated to instill this spirit in young Cambodian American here. I realized then that this was my life calling. In 1989, I graduated and became a dance faculty member and taught at the Royal University of Fine Arts. In addition to my teaching, I perform often for foreign delegations, government and cultural events. I also tour to the countryside, performing for the poor villager to try to educate them about their beautiful cultures. I even performed for Kim Il-sung's 80th birthday ceremony as part of the Royal Dance Troupe in Pyongyang, and in Beijing for Chinese leader Deng Xiaoping.
Wow, this photo is just so amazing. Culture is the spirit of the nation. What words for all of us to remember. And now you're a young dancer. You're walking towards your destiny, and being part of the very, very important generation of cultural artists to revive the Cambodian culture after the Khmer Rouge genocide. How did you end up coming to the United States, right? Shortly after you ended your schooling, you came to the United States. Tell us that story.
One day in 1990 at the school, my colleague came and told me, and there was a young man outside named Rob, who was teaching theater at a university in Thailand while on sabbatical, who was looking for someone who could speak English and who could tell him a little bit about the dance school. I came out and had a long talk with him, and invited him back in a few days later to observe the dance classes. Then later, he likes me and I likes him, and the rest is history. And there was time while we were dating, I was prohibited to see Rob because the director of the school were worried about foreign influence and possible losing dancer that they had spent so many years training. Rob was and always have been supportive of the art and supportive of what I do. He had to ask my uncle Chengpon, using his high school French, for permission to marry me. Rob guaranteed my uncle that he would do everything he could to support my dance and to support the Cambodian culture. We got married and we had a reception at the exhibition hall of the National Theatre. Then in 1993, I immigrated into the United States. When I first arrived, I experienced culture shock just like anyone else would. I arrived at the San Francisco International Airport at night in the winter. I felt so cold and the fog was hanging over my head. It made me feel so small. I did not have family nearby and my English was limited. I had to learn how to navigate through a new world on my own. I thought that the only way for me to move forward with my art is for me to get formal education. So I spent a couple of years taking English classes and continued on to earn AA degree from Santa Rosa Junior College, and then transferred to Sonoma State, where I eventually earned my bachelor degree. While going to school, I was able to adjust and continue to revive dance through teaching and performing. I taught a dance group of young Cambodian students for after-school program at one of elementary school elementary school in Santa Rosa that had a large concentration of Cambodians. I did this for many years until the program was no longer funded. For the first 10 years after being here, my main focus was mostly on teaching different Cambodian communities. My first residency was with an organization, Apsara, in Stockton. I remember teaching at Oak Park community, where many Cambodians live in a large apartment complex. I felt like it was a small village in Cambodia. Nobody spoke English, and everyone would dress like they would in Cambodia. The dance group was run by a couple parents who had no training, but they knew what is important. The students did not have much skill or resources, but they were excited to learn the dance. During that time, I also performed professionally as a soloist, mostly from classical repertoire. And sometimes I performed with my sister Sopeline. And my first performance with the San Francisco Ethnic Dance Festival was in 1995. I remember it was an incredible experience to share a stage with so many talented artists and companies. I would perform there 15 more times. Another mission of my work is doing mentorships. Through actor apprenticeship program, I have mentored a number of apprentices because I believe mentorship allows me to share and to nurture a new generation of young Cambodian dancers and teachers who eventually will go on to serve their communities. Mia Lat was one of my apprentices who first started her training at Khmer Art Academy. She then went on to college where she was more focused on her formal education. After college, she felt lost and reconnected to me. She then started training with me. Later, she became a dancer and had performed with me many times. And she became a managing director at Khmer Art Academy in Long Beach. I have been working directly with Cambodian community. For the past 25 years, I have worked to impact Cambodian community throughout California. I have put together a video of a montage for you. In this residency with Khmer Art Academy, I'm working on a dance from my children refugee project about how refugee children involved in Cambodian impact the relationship they have with their family. I also partner with them on Silenced that I premiere at Long Beach State about the life and times of an iconic Cambodian singer who dies at the hand of the Khmer Rouge. Over the years, I have a multiple residency with San Jose Cambodian group. One of my apprentices, Ryan Bond, now teaches the group. The Khmer Ballet of Stockton consists of many young students with great support from the parents. Khmer Youth of Modesto has an active group of young dancers. They regularly meet at this community center. I wish I lived closer so I could work with them more often. They, like all the community I have worked with, need consistent training, and it is just impossible for me to travel regularly to work with them all. Therefore, I am developing a way to provide them with basic techniques through an online program for Cambodian dance community that would include varieties of resources. Morodak Khmer Performing Arts regularly perform at the Big Temple in Stockton. This group is run by another apprentice of mine, Sophani Yan, whom I taught at the late 1990s during my first residency in Stockton. United Khmer Cultural Preservation in Fresno is run by a group of young dancers who are passionate about working together to serve their community. Like all of these Cambodian programs, they face many obstacles, keeping the dance alive. I have a great respect for what they are doing and what they have accomplished. Teaching at these different community programs has been very rewarding. I thoroughly enjoyed short residency with the Cambodian Association of Illinois. This is the wonderful Wat Khmer Temple dance group from my most recent workshop this past February. Wherever there's a Cambodian community, there is dance, because dance embodies the spirits of our culture. It is important for me to continue to use dance as our strength, a way to cultivate cultural identity, and most importantly, a way to continue us to heal from our recent tragic past. My work has also been focused honoring ancient traditional as well. After 7 years, I have returned to Cambodia for the first time in 2000. I visit my family, the School of Fine Art, and some of my master there. I visit the ancient of temples where I perform. It was a remarkable experience for me to absorb and reflect on my ancient arts and the impact the war had on Cambodian culture. I remember my uncle once said there were nearly 400,000 scholars in Cambodia at the height of the Khmer Empire in 13th century. After the war, in 1980s, there were only 300 scholars. This overwhelming loss inspired me to develop a dance piece called Caressing Nostalgia. Later, I realized that this teaching and preserving alone are not enough. I need to find ways to grow professionally. I began to develop new work that allow my art to evolve, using this ancient movement to tell story that reflects who we are today. I want to continue to tell story that celebrate and heal us from our dark past. Here's an example of a full dance theater piece called Silenced. Here I tell a story of a Cambodian iconic pop singer, Recipient, whose life and music was silenced by the Khmer rule. I look at the beautiful of Cambodian art during the golden time in the 1960s, before the genocide, and the impact of that genocide had on art and culture. I play the Recipient role here. The Khmer silence, Rusaraisatir. They burn books, destroy most cultural documents, kill over 90% of artists and educators, try to get rid of everything associated with our past, try to destroy family, who we were, and yet they failed to break our spirit, the Cambodian spirit.
Wow, Charya. Sorry, go ahead, continue.
For me, Cambodia have two important stories. The story of a genocide and the story of the beautiful culture. And much more of my work is celebrating the beautiful culture through connecting and honoring my ancestors. Here are an excerpt of Spirit Intertwined, which explore the way devotion and reverence can be expressed through my ancestral spirits. This piece will premiere at the San Francisco Opera House as part of the 40th anniversary Ethnic Dance Festival in 2018.
Thank you so much, Charya, for sharing all of that really, really moving journey. I myself, as an audience of the San Francisco Ethnic Dance Festival over the years, I remember seeing you performing as a soloist for many of those years. And in the recent years, knowing your story, my heart was so warm to see you performing with a dance troupe of the next generation of cultural artists and cultural bearers and your students. It is a big part of your effort in keeping the culture alive. So really, today was really the first time I really saw, all of the photos and the videos of so many students that you have worked with, and now these students have grown up and they performed in the San Francisco Ethnic Dance Festival with you. I was at that performance 2018. So I know with your heart, your artistry, that next generation of younger dancers will continue your work for many generations to come. It was really, really great to hear this story. Now, coming back to really in the recent years, I know last year you have received a Dance USA fellowship, and as part of that fellowship, you were able to return to Cambodia. Can you tell us a little bit about that trip?
Yes, last year, through the fellowship, I returned to Cambodia. In Phnom Penh, we film instructional video on costuming and dance techniques. We also document some of the dance pieces from the classical repertoire. I also returned to Battambang province, where I did an installation dance piece at the home of Rosary Satier's only surviving sisters. It was also on this trip that I decided to search for my father's grave. That's where he died during the Cambodian genocide in 1976. I was told that my father's bodies, along with my brother, were buried at this massive grave with other villagers at the rice field outside Chongchidao. This was the trip I always wanted to make. With the assistance from my niece, her husband, and their local friends, we found the area. When we arrived, we talked to the villagers who are still living there over 40 years later. My brother-in-law knew these villagers, and they talked to him on FaceTime. After that, after about an hour, we talked to them. They led us to the area where many bodies were buried. Suddenly, I felt overwhelmed with sadness and pain. It's all brought back the memory of my father and all the suffering he had to endure. I felt closer to him, and I cried. But at the same time, I feel a sense of release and a little bit of a closure. I performed an offering for him. Now, more than ever, I feel determined to honor his spirit, to give him a proper burial. I'm presently working on a way to make this happen by creating a new work.
Yeah. Thank you, Charya. Let me just take a moment to reflect on that. Charya, you were born in 1970, and we're now in 2020. You know, you've shared this amazing, deeply inspirational and painful journey of your life as an artist, culture bearer, activist, mentor. As you look back now, what do you think is your legacy? And if your father were alive today, what do you think he will be saying to you?
Well, I would like to be remembered as a person who spent a lifetime working to revive classical Cambodian dance through preserving authentic movements and gestures and dances of the classical repertoire, helping to strengthen a sense of cultural identity and for young Cambodian Americans here. And as someone who took these traditions to create new work and to try to help heal our community and to enlighten others about the beauty of Cambodian arts.
That's beautiful, Charya. Before we go into the Q&A with the audience, Is there anything else you'd like to share before we go into the formal question and answer?
Thank you so much, Anne. Yes, I just want to say that please go vote. Your vote is your voice. Please do not take this for granted. I remember the first time Cambodia ever had the opportunity to vote was in 1993. And the turnout was 90%. So please go vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Charya. I want to say that I'm my native land, Taiwan. Our first democratic, election was in 1996. I think people really do take that for granted. So voting is a right, and for so many of us is a privilege. So voting is so important. For audience members who would like to ask questions, and if you're on Zoom right now, remember you can use the Q&A option to type in your question. So feel free to forward Charya your questions. Charya, I would love to know, you've been working with the California Cambodian community for a long time. My understanding is like Long Beach is the largest Cambodian community outside of Cambodia. Is that true?
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is I think it has nearly about 50,000, over 50,000 Cambodians.
Yeah. So I would love your observation. You've been working with the various Cambodian communities for about 3 decades now. How have you seen these multi-generational Cambodian communities transform? Both just how have they transformed? Some, I've seen the oldest generation, right? They really were deeply impacted by the genocide. How about the younger generations? And in you working with the community, how is it like to work with the older generations versus generation? Just your sort of stepping back, looking at the community for the last 30 years. What are some of your observations?
I think that for me, working with a young Cambodian American generation here, I think that they feel very passionate. I think they felt deeply connected to their culture, even though they are not, most of them born here. They knew a little bit about their history, about the Cambodian history, mostly about the war, about the genocide. And then when they see the dance, when they learn about the Cambodian dance, it's this beauty that like I was talking about the spirit of Cambodia. The spirit is there, and that somehow is touched or somehow ingrained in the heart of young Cambodians, and like the group in in Fresno, the Cambodian preservation, that these are young group of students. They didn't know a lot of dance. They don't have a lot of dance skill, but their passion and their commitment in trying to get the group together, trying to in some ways learn dances from YouTube. Learn from because they didn't have the real training, but their love is so deep, and I was touched by the effort that that was shown in the community. And the same thing with the Stockton community that I work with, the Apsara, who run by just people who didn't know much about dance, but they knew that it was important. It was important to keep the tradition alive. And again, in Long Beach as well, the Khmer Academy is this, it's an organization that have so much ingrained in the art, and they are known for their, prospering the Cambodian art in Long Beach. And I see all the effort that especially the younger generation, such as Mir and others that are come after, these are younger, and they are trying to stay connected and to lead, take a big step to try to become a young leader in their communities. And I think that it made me feel some hopeful, and that to see this young generation began to take charge. And
that's part of the cultural revival, right? Not just continuing of music, dance, but really this community empowerment that you were talking about of the younger generation, which is really wonderful. We have a question from the audience, a few questions from the audience. First, Marina, what is a quick overview of the different themes of Cambodian dance? Different themes, different stories, different themes of Cambodian dance. Yeah.
Well, for Cambodians, then, if you're talking about like the traditional and classical theme, it's mostly based on prince and princesses, based on mythology, gods and goddesses, like the divine world, and focusing on that heavenly being. And so it's not talked so much about the human world, but the spiritual world, the divine world, heavenly beings.
That's beautiful. Now that I'm thinking about so many of the cultural regalia and costume you've worn in so many performances, really does look like that. And we have another question for Charya. Have you ever thought about what you will be doing if you stayed in Cambodia, or have you ever thought about going back more permanently to stay?
Good question. Yes, I would. Yes, well, if I were still in Cambodia, I would be still teaching at the Royal University. I would hopefully still performing, but I mostly would be continue teaching and try to help rebuild a new generation of dancers. And yes, I would love to go back to Cambodia. And as I mentioned in my talk, is when I returned in 2000 and connecting to Cambodia for the first time after 7 years being here, it was this I don't know, it felt so like it hit you so much, but in both way, beautiful way and painful way, because it's always remind you of the beautiful side of Cambodian arts and Cambodian glory, Cambodian ancients. But then you're looking a little deeper, or looking on the other side, then you got this painful memory, the Khmer Rouge and that kinds of painful history that I think it's still there. It's still pretty much a part of Cambodia.
And Charya, last question from me is, you talked about your lifelong work in the last 30 years, working with different Cambodian communities in the United States. What are your thoughts about the next 30 years of your life? What is the impact, imprint that you would like to have?
Well, first of all, I think that
a loaded question.
to perform. I still would like to continue teach and, to do more documentations. I still would like to continue to create works. Um, and the ideas of just keep going if you feel like this is always part of my mission. So I think that until I feel that like the time that I can't do it, I don't know, but I think I would be able to do it, maybe not 30 years, but dancing maybe 10 more years, 15 more years, but I think it will be something that I would love to continue to work and to teach and to develop and be a part of the, again, the Cambodian culture, Cambodian revival. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Charya. Right now, we're going to bring Jose back on camera. And Charya, I just want to thank you so much for sharing your artistry, your culture, your heart, your spirit, your love with all of us. And Jose, do you have any sort of closing comments, questions?
Thank you so much, Charya. It's a really powerful story because actually, by me representing Eastside Arts Alliance, that always we are looking at systems of power. Like, we are very kind of attuned with social justice, which we think about a lot of socialism, and we see like the sharing of the goods of the people to its citizens, so that you can have a balance. But your story about the care rouge is very very intense and horrible, because actually you start thinking that these regimes of these ideas of government, that they are like socialists, also can be tyrants. They can be like horrible people to its citizens. So for us, it's like, how can we how we need to look at systems of government that they can be problematic, whatever how you in which angle you look at it. And I mean, it's very interesting for me, like like, wow, I always I thought that socialists were good people, but apparently not in Cambodia, right? Like we are thinking in the welfare of the citizens, but when there is people that goes really far, taking all their human rights for granted, it's really horrible. Like, I think always we need to be accountable for any systems that we are living, that doesn't happen, right? That is a horrible. One thing that also I wanted to say, that you are really powerful because you capture your ancestors through your cultures, through your dance. And I think for me, it's kind of like a deep transformation of surviving surviving horror. And I feel so happy that you really had the vision of sharing your legacy through the new generations. And for sure, I truly appreciate that, and it's very inspiring to see you, to meet you, and to know more about you. So for that, I really, really thank you on behalf of Eastside Arts Alliance and Naka Dance Theater. Um, we are honored to be knowing your work and your love through your culture and art. Thank you, Chaira.
Thank you very much, Jose.
And thank you, Jose. Before we wrap up, we really want to acknowledge 3 people who have been part of this program. Our 2 wonderful ASL interpreters, Ebony, Christine, thank you so much this evening. And Debbie Kachiyama, our mastermind behind the scenes, who has been tirelessly working of Naka Theater, Naka Dance Theater, worked tirelessly during the planning, and also right at this moment behind the scenes operating the tech and chats and so forth. If you, for anybody who's watching this program, if you want to see this kind of program continuing, please considering support War Arts West at Eastside Arts Alliance. Debbie's going to type in now the donation links for War Arts West and Eastside Arts Alliance and Naka Dance Theater. Please give the donation of your choice, and to make more of these kinds of programs happen. It's very, very rare for the community to come together and to really hear these sort of full-length stories of how cultural artists are involved in social justice work. We're going to be recording this session, and these sessions will be available on our websites, on our YouTube channels, on our Facebook page, and please share them out with your community. It's very, very important for us to continue sharing these stories. So thank you, thank you, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Ebony, Christine. Thank you, Charya, Debbie, Jose. Remember, in 2 more weeks, October 20th, we're going to bring back our legendary Miss Alleluia Panis. She is going to have another great story to share about being a pioneering Filipino artist in the United States. So please tune in 2 more weeks and support these programs. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you for watching. Charya, thank you so much. Ebony and Christine, thank you.
Thank you.